Hi, Tim Clark with End Times Matrix News coming at you live on May 21st. We have author Anthony Patch with us today. We have Heidi and Chris as usual. She has a long presentation that we're always grateful to get because we get so many things out of it, and it's a real blessing. Today's show is called Primordial Saturn Sun Electric Universe, CERN and Apollo. And so we're always enjoying digging deeper on these topics, and we're going to just throw the show over to Chris, and she can go ahead and get started, and we'll plow right through all this, and I'm sure we're going to get all kinds of more revelations today.
All right. Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. Yep, today's show is Primordial, Saturn, Sun, Electric Universe, CERN, and Apollo. And so we're going to connect some more dots here. On our last show, we kind of talked about the Temple Mount, and we went over some connections with the moon god and the sun god. So we have a couple of interesting revelations to share with some more connections today, and we have Anthony here that might be able to help out with some questions that I have too. So Dave Talbot's work has actually been a great bridge for me. His work has helped me to understand a lot of things about in today's time and what happened then when I put together the information from the Egyptians and their gods and the hieroglyph symbolisms and the Saturn cults and the sun god temples, and to try to understand, well, why is there a sun god and why is there a moon god, and how does this fit into everything with the equinoxes and the golden age and what they're trying to bring out again, the new golden age. A map of CERN and the Temple Mount. They're actually right across from each other. And this is the moon temple of the moon god. And this is the sun temple because CERN is built over Apollo's temple. So I find that quite interesting with the research that I've done connecting some things. And I have a few surprises in this presentation, so just bear with me. Apollo, I'm sorry, but they're always naked when you pull up there. They just love to be naked then I guess. But Apollo is the sun god, and this is a statue of Apollo from the Greeks. And this is Apollo on a vase that he's always shown with the 4 horses. And he's the sun god here. He has half siblings except for Artemis, who is actually Aphrodite and Isis, and I'll try to go into a little bit more of that. But Hermes is his half-brother, and he represents the moon, and Hercules was a hybrid, and Helena Troy was his half-sister. And Minos was one of the judges of the dead of the underworld, which was a bull god. So these are all mythological gods, but if you look at the elite, the Vatican, and all the connections with these gods, you'll see that they really take these gods serious. I mean, they're connected to the fallen angels, the 7, which became the 8. This is an obelisk from Heliopolis. I wanted to show this, and then I was going to show some of the names of the sun god, but this is from Egypt in the temple. Saturn's name is also Helio. It's translated to that as well. This is called the City of the Sun in Lower Egypt, and the chief center was Ra, Heliopolis, called Lunu, the place of pillars in Egyptian. And so Autumn was another sun god, and then he became Autumn Ra, and this is through a long process that I can't get into now. We've done a lot of shows on those connections, but it has to do with the Ogdoad and the Ennead, and these 4 Egyptian gods that they worship as the 8, 4 above and 4 below. So just keep that number in mind, the number 8. This is Horus of 2 Horizons. He represents Kinsu, and Khonsu. This is his representation. I know Khonsu is the moon god, but this is also representative of the rise of him, and it's connected to the sun god temple. The phoenix, Bennu, after rising from the ashes of its predecessor, would bring ashes to the altar of the sun god in Heliopolis, so that was a connection to that. And on his Benben stone, you can see the two eyes together. So this was, I guess, a combination of the sun and the moon together, because one eye represents the sun and one eye represents the moon. So these are some of the names of Saturn: Helios, Sun, Saturn, Saturnalia in Rome. This was what it was called back then. Shamash is a sun god, and he also represents the sun. Venus, Moloch, El, Ra, Bel, and Greeks and Romans, they claim to be the descendants of Saturn. They claim to be that bloodline of Saturn. And at the end of the Golden Age, Saturn fell to the opposite side of the axis. That's what is written in some of the text. Bel or Moloch, Nimrod, the sun god, also known as the Roman god Saturn, Satan, the devil. In English, his name is Ninurta. We went over this on our last show. Succuth is the divinity associated with a star by the prophet, is an alternative appellation for Ninurta, was a Babylonian planet god merged with Saturn. So this is where you get Jupiter, because he represents Jupiter, and you see he's holding the lightning bolts in his hand. And interesting enough, that word is tied to Succuth, and I'm sorry if I pronounce these wrong. I haven't looked up the correct pronouncement. So Mem, I know Mem is connected to Venus, and it's also connected to CERN with their phosphorus. Maybe I said that wrong, but I guess they're called muons, actually, not phosphorus, but phosphorus is connected to the AI computer. So this means abomination of desolation. And I had a verse about that, but I lost it here. We'll just move on. Okay, so this is, we know who this guy is. He's the son of Saturn. And he worships the sun. He kisses this quite a bit. He loves it. And he has the wheat and the bees on his clothing. Saturn is he represents the wheat. I can't find the word that I'm thinking of, but he represents like corn and grain and stuff like that. That's what kind of god he represents. He represents these things. Ninurta is a farmer. He represents that too. This is the symbol of Saturn, and this is on the Vatican's wand here that he carries around. Here's his hat. You see the symbol on his hat with the star here? This is the same star that you always see on the Sumerian artifacts. And this is called a Saturn hat. It's not a cowboy hat. It's a Saturn hat that he has on his head. This is a picture from the Thunderbolts project, and I thought it was interesting because Jupiter is actually behind Saturn. You can't see him. And then Saturn is here, and then Venus she represents the navel too, because she gives birth to Mars. And interestingly enough, this is called the navel of the world, which this represents Mother Earth and the universe, and Tiamat, which was the mother dragon that Marduk slayed, which Marduk also represents Zeus and Ninurta. And so I just wanted to kind of point out, I thought it was interesting, these symbols here. And then also I want to talk about the gods being birthed, because this is a depiction from the Thunderbolts project of the gods being birthed and Mars being birthed. And Then I wanted to talk about the horse lock. It's a symbol that the Jews wear on the side of their head. And anyone who wore these in Egypt, like this is Ptah, and this is also representative, I guess she's Hatshepsut. And Hatshepsut's daughter also wore the side lock because they claim to be Ammon, the sun's children directly from their DNA. And then, so this was kind of like a depiction that the Saturn, Venus, and Mars would make this whirling breath of a side lock. Then this is why they wore it on their head. I'll show another picture of that. But you know, just in my gut, I just say, okay, well, they wear this because this is what they worship, is through this same god of the Egyptians. So it's called life breath curl, and this was what it would look like when they would see it in the sky. This is where a lot of the cultures all over the world get the same symbolism as from the sky. Just keep that in mind with the plasma and electricity. So this also represents alchemy. It's another symbol that represents the Ouroboros in Egypt. So this is like a lot of hieroglyphs have this symbol, and this is Ihi. He's the young Horus, and he also represents Khonsu and Ptah and Hatshepsut. So whenever the Mars would go down into this area, it would make like a hat, and they would call it this is, I know my mother, the White Crown Egyptian pyramid text, and this is the symbols of Venus, Mars, and Saturn. Very interesting. This is a cosmic thunderbolt, and there's a lot of symbolism for this. Here's one of the thunderbolts that the ancients would make. And this would be Ninurta's thunderbolt, and this is what it represents in his hand right here. Ninurta came, and this is his triumph symbol here with the wreath and the two pyramids. And you'll see this a lot because there's these represent an omphalos stone. There's two of them here, and sometimes you can see like Enki, he's in the center of both of them. And then you'll see like Apollo, and he's standing on one stone. Are the Anunnaki gods, and Anunnaki, well, they're inside of this portal here, and this represents the Abzu. Well, the Abzu represents the abyss, and the abyss we talked about on our last show, how it is underneath the dome of the rock, and that's, you know, represents the navel of the world. It's another picture of Ninurta. I'm not sure what this thing is, but it's some kind of mechanism here that he has. He doesn't have the thunderbolt thing in his hand, but he has this on this one. But see this picture? This is like on that we saw on the Pope's hat. Same picture. The star is on a lot of the hieroglyphs. So Mithra was Jupiter worship. So just keep in mind that he does represent Jupiter, the resurrected Saturn. And this verse here talks about the abomination of desolation set up on the altar at that time, building an idol. And that's what it's referring to, is this Mithra, because you see she's killing the bull, and that is the Apis. It's the Ka of Osiris. And that's why you see all the Egyptians wearing the bull tails. And here you see the sun and the moon. And then you see Mithra, which was supposedly born from a rock. And I have some more stuff on that below. But This is, Anthony, I was going to show you this symbol here that we talked about before with happy. Happy represents the lungs and the water. And happy is the call of Osiris. And that's what it's representative of here, killing this bull here, the Apis bull, which represents Ptah, Osiris, and Autumn. And these are linked to the pole star, which is Ursa Major, and these four deities, the four souls of Horus. So in Mithricism, they do this thing here called, they christen their right hand or their forehead. This was done with anointing of ashes from a blood of a bull. The blood sprinkling was from the blood of a bull, and that's why they kill the bull. And so they're calling the bull God, which is Osiris. So this is in representation of his blood, of a sacrifice of him. And so they would do this Trinity, the Sun, S-U-N God, Sun God, and the Holy Ghost, the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And they would do this symbol here. And this would represent the moon Isis, the sun Osiris, and the star Venus, which is Horus. And so this was what they would do in the caves when they would worship Mithra in all of the caves. It's called Jupiter worship, and it's in these temples. The Ogdode, we've talked about this lots of times on the show when Tim and I have done many, many shows about the 8. As above, so below. There's 2 gods that represent, they're male and female. They're hermaphrodites. And these two are male and female each. They represent this cross that you see the Vatican, the popes wear, which represents 4, but they're really 8. And when you pull this up, it represents a pyramid. So it represents the 8. And this is the cross that they put on the head, or the hand or the head. So this is represented in the 4 deities above and the 4 deities below when they put this on, which are the spirits of Osiris. And they also represent the Serapis and Mithra, the male and female aspect of one deity. So Serapis is the same as the Mithra worship. This is Phanes, and also Mithra being birthed from the world, the earth. And she has the 2 snakes around her with a crown. She also represents in New York, the Statue of Liberty. So here's just another depiction I've showed before of the egg with the cross. When you put them all together, all 8 of them, they represent the star of Venus, which represents the Asherah pole and the tree of knowledge and good and evil. So all these crosses, the tall cross, all these crosses, this cross is represents 8. Represents the Ogdode and the 8 deities. And this was Venus's symbol in Hellenistic times because she was the castrated Saturn and became Venus. And then she was resurrected as Horus, as Thoth, and Isis. Let me go to here first. Okay, so I just said that she was resurrected as Horus, as Thoth and Isis. Well, if you look at the name Hermes and Aphrodite, that's hermaphrodite together. That's where you get that name, from them two. So Ishtar's identification with Venus is of a special interest. When that planet was at its brightest phase, its rays were referred to as the beard of the goddess. She was the bearded Aphrodite, a bisexual deity, evidently. So here's the book that someone wrote, Donald Mackenzie wrote about this. There's many books out there that talk about the deities and how they're both male and female, because the angels were not really a sex. You know, they were just angels. And so all these deities like Hermes is Bacchus, and Hermes is a male and female god that represents, male and female. They pretty much all do. Bel does. Ninurta does. They pretty much represent the male and female. And this was a picture, and this is in the Museum, and this is Venus with a phallus, and this is showing her rising up from when Saturn was killed. And or he can't be killed, but when he was castrated. And so she is on the back of Patong, and this was we've talked about the communications with their electronic or tuning forks and the waves and how they communicated with each other. And this is Isis or Mari or Ashura, and she has the box on the back of her head with a pole. And Amon, he does too. He has the thing on the back of his head. But what's interesting is there's something happened here with the beginning and the of doors of beginning with Janus during this time, because Isis represents the moon and Saturn represents the sun. Well, after that, Janus was representative as Sol, which is the sun, and his counterpart was Jana, the moon. So they were regarded as the highest gods when the Titans were when they were ruling and during that time. So there's a connection there, and we're still working on that dualism with Janus and his female counterpart in that dualism here, because if you look at these planets, this is Venus and Mars and the sun on this side, and here's the moon and Jupiter and Saturn on this side. So this is dualism here, that Janus represents the sun and the moon, and Osiris and Isis, and these two represent the pole stars, the south and the north, and combined. And I'll show that below there. Here's a Anubis, and this is Hermes when he was merged into Anubis, Anubis. And they do these rituals. They put Anubis going on a boat in between the Statue of Liberty, so they do those rituals. You can look that up online. And then there's a statue of Anubis, Anubis actually, in the Vatican. So this is Hermes as Anubis carrying his caduceus in the Vatican. Anubis, Enter the Stars did a video after I did a lot of research on this. I saw his video that Anubis became Osiris. So these scales represent this tall cross. And then these represent the DNA in the lungs, and this is Happy on the Kabbalah tree. That's what that represents here. And then you can see Osiris here with the leg of the bull. In front of him, this represents the four souls of Horus and the Ursa Major. This is going to be real interesting when I get down at the end, connection with the computer. But so this was in the dynasty, around 3100, 2890, and I guess after the flood, this was different, because this was whenever Osiris resurrected it as Jupiter to the underworld. But so El, whom the ancients Greek identified their god Kronos, just as Bel with Zeus, Yam with Poseidon, and Mot with Hades. And so this is Bel Hadad, which is Zeus, Mot, which represents Pluto. Pluto is real interesting. We're going to have to do a show with the more connections of Pluto, because that's the crown chakra. It represents the netherworlds. Yam is Poseidon, the god of the sea, and he represents the abyss, which is different from the netherworld. And he also represents Set and Zeus, because this would be the Osiris, when he was killed to the underworld. He rose back up from the underworld, and then he became Zeus, which was resurrected Saturn. And these are showing all of his offspring here, which he represents pretty much Apollo too. So when I was doing my research, one of the things that I wanted to point out here that's very interesting that I've never looked into is this sextant, which is I realized that Osiris, whenever Tim was showing me some stuff from a video, we did the Dig series videos, there's a symbol here that I recognized, and I said, oh, I've seen that symbol before. And this is a symbol of Osiris. And I said, well, where does that come from? I have no idea what this is. Well, this is what it is. This is the South Pole star. So half of his deity is the South Pole star, representative of, and then the other one is the other side, which is Polaris, which is Juno. Juno is the symbol that we've showed, which represents Venus. And then I remember it said that he fell from the other side of the axis, and it's called Sigma Octantis. Sorry about that. Sigma Octantis is, sorry about that. It's the name of the Latin for the 8 part of a circle. And there we get that 8 again. But it's named after octant, a navigational instrument. This represents the Christmas tree. It represents the Birkeland currents going up to the star, which is the Saturn, Venus, and Mars and Jupiter combination, which is the 4. So I found that really interesting that this star is a South Pole star. South Pole, North Pole, there's an electromagnetic field that goes through our Earth. And this is the pole star that represents the swastika when it spins around. And we've talked about this before, how the Birkeland currents would go up. And this would be what the ancients would see in the sky.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, weren't we looking at that pentagram in the sky as of August 15th or something? Wasn't it? You remember that video we were checking out on the August 15th pentagram?
Oh, yeah. That was August 15th, yeah.
Oh, okay. Is this related to it? Gotcha. I made her go and disappear. No. Oh, she'll be right back. I ask a question and she falls off the show here. Heidi, Anthony.
Yep, we're here.
All right. I didn't know if it was me disappeared or if she disappeared. She'll be right back. She has the link. She'll pop back on. Oh, that's what I get for asking.
I wanted to give her the floor today. She's got so much information.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scribbling notes like crazy here.
Yeah, we just had seen that pentagram, the alignment with the August 15th, and that's why I was just bringing out that point. Let's see. It says, I was disconnected. Let me check out my chat here.
I think it's you and me.
So let's see. I guess Heidi got disconnected, and and that's interesting. Yeah, she said she disconnected. You could try the original Google link, Heidi. See if you can that Chris gave you. See if you pop back on with that. Let's see.
Today, NSA.
Yeah, well, folks have been having a little bit of trouble with these Google Hangouts lately. And
Yeah, we could be getting some interference from the sun.
yeah, that's what I was actually thinking. I've been seeing it's been strange. When they come back on, we'll just we'll note in the description box where we pick back up with the discussion, so people can jump to that point. I hope her computer didn't go down. Well, I found it interesting from the last show that we were talking about the CERN Apollo connections, and she's putting them up there with the CERN and Sun and the Apollyon connections again with the Dome of the Rock and the Moon connections. And we'll see if they pop back up here. Let me check I'm going to check the emails real quick, Anthony, just to see if they're trying to contact me that way. Okay, let's see what she says. I had to reboot, not sure why, trying to get back on. So, yeah, when you do a lot of, as much presentation material as she's doing, you can end up crashing a system. There's she. Well, that's Heidi. Do we have Heidi? Let's see if we got Heidi. I'm seeing double.
Yeah, me too.
Double Heidis, but they're not. Let's see. Not here yet. I'll just check what she's there. Okay. All right. We don't have the song and dance or the elevator music playing right now for the intermission.
Yes.